In the fading breath of autumn, Sarah Matthews pressed her palm to the brittle wallpaper of her new home, a country house crouched beneath the low skies of Milfield. 8 months pregnant, newly divorced, and desperate for a fresh start, she'd taken the suspiciously cheap property without hesitation. The locals had stared at her in the market, eyes sliding away like shadows avoiding light. No one mentioned why the realtor had avoided showing her the basement, or why, the night before, she'd found a child's shoe half buried in the garden, stained with something that looked like dried blood. The air in the house seemed to hum with the memory of things left undone. The previous family, the Millers, had vanished 15 years ago, leaving dishes in the sink, clothes still folded in drawers, and a silence that stretched across every corner. That first evening, as Sarah sat on the porch swing, the October breeze carried the scent of rain and rotting leaves. Somewhere inside, a floorboard creaked as though remembering footsteps long gone. The next morning brought her only visitor, a woman from town, Dr. Ellen Parker, who arrived under the guise of checking her blood pressure. The doctor's voice was kind but guarded, her eyes scanning the house as if expecting it to move. When Sarah asked about the Millers, Parker's smile faltered, replaced by a silence too heavy to be polite. "They left suddenly," she said, packing away her stethoscope. "Houses like this keep stories. Best not to dig too deep." But curiosity was Sarah's nature, and that evening she explored every room until she found one door nailed shut, a cabinet in the nursery. Inside, beneath layers of dust, the faint smell of metal lingered. On the back wall, a child's scrawl read, "James was here." The words cut through the quiet like a whisper. Downstairs, the kitchen's paint didn't quite match. A darker patch bled through the newer layer. When she scraped it with her nail, the red beneath wasn't paint at all. Her breath caught. At that moment, heavy boots sounded on her porch. Walter Green, the elderly neighbor, stood with a carton of eggs in one hand and unease in his eyes. "Found that old cabinet, did you?" he said. "Some things in this house ought to stay buried." Then he turned away, his warning dissolving into the rustle of dry leaves. That night, Sarah woke to a sound, a faint scratching from inside her bedroom wall. It was soft but steady, like fingernails against plaster. When she turned on the lamp, it stopped. Silence pressed in so tightly she could hear her own pulse. "Hello?" she whispered. The house listened, but did not answer. The next day, at Milfield's single grocery store, conversations hushed when she entered. Sheriff Dean Richards introduced himself with a handshake that felt more like a test. "Old house can be temperamental," he said, "especially that basement. Needs a permit for any work." His tone was casual, but his eyes were sharp. Later, the town librarian, Meredith Collins, approached her with a knowing smile. "If you're curious about history," she said softly, "the archives might have what you're looking for. Just don't let the sheriff see you digging." That evening, Sarah found old newspaper clippings hidden behind a loose baseboard, yellowed headlines about a tragic accident at Lakeview Road. Every article was torn at the same place, the endings missing, as if someone had decided the town didn't need to remember how the story ended. When thunder rolled outside and the lights went out, she lit candles and tried not to look toward the window, but in the lightning's brief flash, she saw a silhouette at the edge of the trees, still and watching. Days passed like a fog, each one heavier than the last. The whispers in the walls came more often. Sometimes she swore she heard a child's laughter, distant and hollow. Driven by the need to know, Sarah returned to the library where Meredith guided her through dust-covered records. "The Millers," Meredith said, pulling a folder from a locked cabinet. bought your house in 2005. Then in 2010, it transferred directly to the bank. No foreclosure, no signatures, just a missing family. The mystery deepened when she learned that Thomas Miller, the father, had worked at a local casino owned by the town's mayor, William Campbell, a man whose family's name appeared on nearly every official document. Campbell Pines Resort, Meredith whispered, closed after a scandal no one would name. As Sarah left the library, she glimpsed movement behind an upstairs window of her home, a curtain shifting, though the air outside was still. That night, she climbed into the attic, the boards groaning beneath her weight. There, under a sheet, she found a wooden chest filled with baby clothes, a half-burned photo, and 4 smiling faces carefully scratched out with something sharp. The air in the attic turned cold, and her unborn child kicked violently in protest. That night, her dreams were filled with screams and the metallic scent of blood. When Sarah awoke, muddy footprints stretched across her bedroom floor, too large to be her own. Every door and window had been locked. Terrified, she confided in Meredith, who insisted that the two of them visit the county records office. But every file on the Millers had been redacted or sealed for restoration. The bank refused to speak to her. The mayor's secretary hung up the phone, and the sheriff began driving by her house at odd hours. Each dead end only confirmed one thing: they were hiding something. Then, while examining her basement walls, Sarah discovered crude drawings, stick figures of a family, and behind them a tall black shape looming like a shadow-given form. When she touched the drawings, dizziness swept through her, and she heard faint laughter echoing from the corners of the room. Her flashlight caught a symbol carved into a support beam, a circle inside a square, radiating lines outward. She didn't understand it then, but the mark was a warning and an invitation. Later that night, the sheriff arrived unannounced, claiming reports of trespassers. He stood in her kitchen without being invited, eyes flicking toward the basement door. When he finally left, Sarah changed the locks and installed a small camera. But what it captured wasn't human. At 2:17 a.m., a white envelope slid into frame without the door opening. Inside, the words were scrawled in shaky ink: "Leave it buried, or you'll join them." The next morning, she took the footage to Meredith, who introduced her to her brother, Michael, a former journalist with eyes that had seen too much. He examined the video and the note, then nodded grimly. "Classic small-town cover-up," he said, "but the supernatural? That's new." Together, they uncovered Thomas Miller's journal hidden in the attic, each entry more frantic than the last. Found evidence: Campbell using resort to launder money for someone bigger, calling the FBI tomorrow, Hannah and the kids leaving tonight. That was his final note. Sarah's blood ran cold. If he'd planned to leave, then someone had stopped him first. Soon the threads connected: the missing family, the mayor's resort, and a money-laundering scheme tied to organized crime. But when Michael vanished after meeting a contact, Sarah's fear turned to fury. She broke through a false basement wall and found stains that weren't paint, a teddy bear crushed beneath debris, and a map with an X marked beneath the house. As she called Meredith to warn her, headlights appeared outside. The sheriff again, this time with deputies carrying excavation tools. She fled into the night, her heart pounding in rhythm with the child inside her. In the days that followed, Sarah and Meredith hid in motels, aided by Jack Reynolds, a private investigator who'd been tracking the same case. Together, they uncovered more of the truth. Thomas had discovered that the resort's renovations were built over bodies, critics and whistleblowers encased in concrete foundations. The mayor, the sheriff, even Dr. Parker, all complicit. When they found Hannah's porcelain doll, its back sewn shut, they opened it to reveal a USB drive containing photos, financial records, and Hannah's final letter. "If you find this, they've killed us. Deliver it to the FBI." But as they prepared to leave town, Sarah received a message. "They have Michael, old resort basement." Reynolds wanted to secure the evidence first, but Sarah couldn't abandon him. That night, under a moon like a silver blade, they crept through the ruins of Campbell Pines Resort. Through a cracked window, she saw the sheriff and the mayor standing over a bound figure. Michael was alive, barely. As they planned their rescue, the click of a gun echoed behind them. Dr. Parker's voice, calm and cold, said, "The mayor's been expecting you." They were dragged inside, wrists bound, the evidence seized. Campbell smiled like a man used to power. "You should have left it buried," he said. When Sarah demanded to know what happened to the Millers, his voice never wavered. "They made the mistake of believing truth matters more than survival." Her stomach clenched, not from fear, but from pain. Contractions had begun. Parker's face softened only for a moment. "You're in labor," she said, almost pitying. Campbell's eyes gleamed. "Perfect timing. We can always use a replacement family." Upstairs, Reynolds fought against his restraints. Downstairs, Michael whispered that he'd managed to free one hand. As Campbell turned away to answer his phone, the lights flickered, then burst, plunging the basement into darkness. A sudden cold swept through the room, carrying the scent of wet earth. Then faintly came the laughter of children. When the emergency lights flicked on, the mayor was no longer standing. He was sprawled on the floor, blood pooling beneath him, a small handprint marked across his cheek in ash. The chains that bound Sarah snapped free. The spirits of the Millers had finally come home. By dawn, sirens wailed through Milfield. State police arrived to find a house full of bodies. Campbell dead, the sheriff wounded, and the resort's basement concealing remains that matched those of the missing family. The truth spread like wildfire. Headlines screamed about corruption, murder, and the town that kept its silence for 15 years. Sarah's baby, born in the back of an ambulance, survived. She named her Emma, after the middle name on Hannah Miller's birth certificate. Months later, when she returned to the house on Lakeview Road, it was no longer a place of fear, but of memory. The floors had been replaced, the walls painted new, but sometimes at night the air still shimmered with unseen presence. In the garden, beneath a young rosebush, she buried the locket found near the foundation, a photo of a smiling girl and a little boy with bright eyes. "Rest now," she whispered, feeling the breeze wrap around her like gratitude. The following year, Milfield rebuilt itself from the ashes. Meredith published her brother's findings. The FBI dismantled the corruption network, and the mayor's estate was turned into a memorial garden for the victims. Sarah's house became a symbol of survival, though she never spoke publicly about what truly happened that night. Some evenings, she'd sit on the porch swing with baby Emma in her arms, watching fireflies rise from the grass. Inside, lights sometimes flickered, not menacingly, but like someone saying good night. And when the wind rustled through the trees, it carried faint laughter, soft, playful, free. The townspeople who once looked away now nodded kindly as they passed, their silence no longer born of fear, but of respect for the woman who uncovered the truth. As the sun dipped below the lake, Sarah felt the house breathe with her. The darkness it once held had been turned to peace, its story finally told. For those who listen closely, Milfield still whispers the same lesson through its autumn wind, that some houses remember, some souls never truly leave, and some truths, no matter how deeply buried, always find their way home. If this story moved you, remember to like, share, and subscribe for more tales of the haunted and the forgotten, because sometimes The scariest stories are the ones that actually happened.